Okay, here we go. All right. Once again, thank you everyone for joining me today here. We, as we welcome one of CMAA's longtime strategic partners, Kahua. Kahua helps owners and contractors improve efficiency, reduce costs, and manage risk across the project lifestyle. Offering a next generation project management collaboration solution, the Kahua platform now serves over 23,000 customers worldwide. With that, I am going to turn it over to Lincoln to introduce today's panelists.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Can you please share the screen? Thank you. All right, thank you everyone for joining. We're excited to have you all join us today. Wherever you're joining us in the world, thank you so much. This is going to be an exciting and insightful session. As you can see in the topic, with how AI is everywhere today, we are going to be treating a very significant topic: AI in construction. What are the risks? What are the rewards? And what is next? And with that, I'm going to be introducing our panelists. Next slide, please. Taylor Last is going to be walking us through what is next around AI, what is Kahua doing around AI, and your sitting is going to be talking through some use cases, AI use cases in construction, what are the risks and what are the rewards. And before I allow them to introduce themselves more deeply, I would like to say, please use the Q&A section to drop your questions. This is going to be a very participatory webinar, so we're going to pick some of the questions and ask our panelists to answer some of them. And at the end, we're also going to have some time for you to, ask more questions. And with that, Taylor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Lakin. Hey, everyone. My name is Taylor Last. As Lakin mentioned, I lead the AI team at Kahua. Excited to talk more about AI, how we think about it, and what we're actually doing. With that, I'll give it to Hugh.
Hey, folks. I'm Hugh Seaton. I'm the managing director at Quantum Rise, an AI consultancy. Good friend of Kahua and someone who's been working in contact for about the last 15 years or so.
Awesome. Do you want to take it over?
Sure. So, folks, we're going to start at the beginning. We'll talk about what is AI, and I think that's important. I know you've heard 100 definitions of it. I'm not a big fan of shiny robots and talking about comparing it to humans or comparing it to a artificial general intelligence. You may have heard that term. I think there's just I don't think this. We all know there's a ton of hype right now, and I'd like to just start with defining it both by what it is, but also what it can do. So what AI is. Let's anchor it rather than anchoring it in the human mind or in magic or in all these other ways people talk about it. It's software. It is pretty important software. It can do things in the real world in a way that classic software cannot. It can do this because it's built on training, unlike traditional software. As I mentioned, it uses explicit instructions and is brittle. What we mean by that is, you think about how you really talk or how you really write things, or God forbid, how you really actually write things, with a pen. Traditional software is not great at that. If you've ever had to import information from into Excel, you've seen what I mean, where if it's not formatted the right way or there's an extra dot or an extra whatever, it just breaks. It doesn't work. Well, AI is really good at taking information the way it really exists in the world, recognizing it, classifying it, doing interesting things with it. And then, from there, we can put it into traditional software and do all of the things that we're used to. So a lot of what you're going to see is AI able to take the world as it is, the messy real world, and nothing, if there's ever been an industry that's got a lot of different variables, whether it's, one subcontractor or what's one general contractor, or maybe it's a supplier, or maybe it's, the facilities team, whatever it is, people use different words, they write things different ways, they describe them different ways. Drawings are famously, all over the place in terms of what the standards are and how we're writing them. I spent a lot of time with specifications. I can tell you that that's true there too. How do we take the world as it is and pull it into different types of software? That's where AI really shines. So the way to think about it is, what can it do? So we talk about how it mimics some human mental capabilities. So again, it's not the human mind. It's not a digital version of the human mind. However, it can do some of what our minds can do. whether that's summarizing normal language, creating content, making plans, assessing things, sometimes correcting output. What you're also seeing a lot of this year is agentic systems that can understand goals, plan and perform some tasks, and deliver completed results. Now, what you're going to hear over and over again is humans still need to be part of that. These systems are far from perfect, but they often can automate steps and automate pieces. And you'll hear Taylor talk a little bit more about that later. So the key takeaway from this slide is think about AI as software. Think of it as an extension of the software that you've used before and you've seen grow in sophistication over the last 20 plus years. As opposed to thinking, gosh, I should be comparing this to what a human could do, because that's not only not right, it's also going to often kind of take you off track. What it's not. So people often, no one ever says AI is magic, but we sometimes act like it is. It's just software that can do things that are a lot more flexible and realistic than other software. It's not human-like in its thinking. Unfortunately, because it can write things and you read those things as if a human read them, we sometimes fall into the trap of thinking that it can do all of the other things that a human mind can do, until you actually try and you realize, wait, it got that wrong, or it missed this, or that wasn't a conclusion I would have reached. Think of it as powerful but limited. Another way of thinking about it is narrowly superhuman. And the truth is, we've been dealing with superhuman software since the calculator. I mean, a calculator is superhuman at arithmetic. So it's not unusual to have software that is superhuman. In this case, it does more things than other software, and in those narrow areas, it is superhuman. I think the biggest danger that we're going to face over the next little while is not that it's not a cybersecurity thing, although that's definitely a concern, is that we start to rely on AI too much. That it becomes an easy button. It doesn't reliably make work go away. It's a tool like anything else, and like any other tool, it has its limits, and we're going to talk a little more about that. So, and of course, you keep hearing, especially people that are trying to raise $40 billion, that it's a worker replacement, and that's flat out not true. AI can support and it can automate tasks, but these are not the complete purpose of a job. The job of let's call it a pipe fitter, is to install and also to work with their team and also to be part of a crew and so on and so forth. The job of a facilities manager is to manage the facility, not do all of the tasks that are part of that. Yes, they overall have to make sure that those tasks get done, but one or two tasks or even three or four of those tasks doesn't mean the job gets replaced. It means the person has more time to focus on more complicated or more interpersonal parts of the job. So this idea that AI is going to replace, huge swaths of jobs, we already are not seeing that. And if you look at when computers entered the workforce about 30 years ago, and then the internet, and then mobile, and so on, each time we thought that we would be replacing a lot more jobs than we did. What does happen is we get busier, and our lives get with the difference between work and your private life does get eroded a little bit. If anything, that's something to look out for. Another point here is there's a temptation to think that this is all very new. And the truth is, we've been trying to make machines that think. That was kind of the original idea literally since the 50s. And we've had waves of attempts to do this, and thinking of it as climbing up a ladder towards where we ultimately want to get. Right now, there are two that are in market, deep learning and generative AI. Deep learning isn't something that you directly deal with very much. It usually requires a ton of data, and you need professionals to make it work. Generative AI is what's in chatbots, so we're dealing with that every day. So back to this idea of AI versus traditional software. Think about the software you've been using up until 2022, right? That's based on instructions, and that's code. So you've got a software developer that writes hundreds and thousands of lines of code, and it's incredibly reliable. If it isn't reliable, we go fix it to make it reliable. But the expectation is that every time you do the right thing, it's always going to come out with what you expect it to come out with. So if I put a bunch of numbers into Excel, I don't expect that there's a high probability that the numbers will be right. I expect there's 100% probability. We sometimes call this deterministic, and you may hear that sometimes, this distinction between deterministic and probabilistic, which is what AI is. So in the case of traditional software, if it's been built right, it will always do what it's supposed to do. However, That also means that you need to give it exactly the right inputs. I sometimes will talk about, if you think about it as a McDonald's drive-through window, if you ask with the right words, you always do what you expect. If you ask with the wrong words, they don't know, they're not going to give you a Whopper. In contrast, you have AI. In the deep learning case, that's how computer vision, which you've seen from things like some of you on the construction side will have seen open space. In fact, I think on the facility side, they're doing some things as well. But the fact that you can use your face to open your iPhone, right? That's computer vision. That was totally impossible before AI. So when you think about computer vision, that's a good example of being able to handle inputs that are, that are not perfect. And it's not that your face isn't perfect, but it'll work where the lighting is wrong. It'll work if you turn to the right or turn to the left. So the point is it's flexible for real world inputs. The downside of that is because you have these variable inputs coming in, it also means that what comes out of it, what it generates, also is a probability. And that means that you need to put real engineering, and this is where people like Taylor spend most of their time, is putting guardrails around it, making sure that what goes in is controlled and is augmented in ways that it really makes sure that what comes out is what you expect. So the danger with AI is that it's probabilistic. So it takes a fair amount of work to make it reliable, which again is what folks at Kahua and other places spend a lot of time on. But as we'll discuss in a moment, it also means that when you go use a generalist tool like a ChatGPT or a Claude or whatever, what comes out is going to look really good. But keep in mind that under the hood, it's still a probability. It's probabilistic, which means it's giving you something that is plausible, that could be right, but might not be, which is why sometimes you hear terms like hallucinations. So it means that it's a very powerful tool, but it needs a gearbox and it needs corralling to make sure that it does what we want it to do. As a result, and this is part of, again, what folks at Kahua and other places do, is wherever you can, stick with traditional software and use AI where you need to use AI. So a successful AI overall system blends the power of AI to deal with the real world with the reliable of traditional software. So for example, you're probably never going to hear the term AI database. And if you do, it means there's AI that's been stuck on top of a traditional database. You don't need AI for what databases do, certainly not the ones that we're used to. And same thing with security. We want to make 100% sure that our security works, so we don't use AI for that. Maybe for an input, we may have the security give you some kind of an output, so it's describing things the way you want to hear them or whatever. But at the core, what's going on with security is going to be using traditional software methods. Again, with information routing, I don't want it to probabilistically, a high probability it's going to go where I want it to go. I want information routing to be exactly where it's supposed to go. It's great for normal language inputs, for extracting information from images, from scans, from text that's written the way you normally write it. You can tell it what you want. It'll figure it out how to get it for you. But the foundations and the framework of the system are going to be hard-coded. They're going to be heavily debugged, and they're going to be reliable or we won't release them. So the difference often between beta and production is we're most of the way there, but we're still working through reliability, especially when we're figuring out quite how people are going to want to interact with the system. So hopefully that gives you a good baseline definition of AI. It's software that can handle the messiness, the variability of the real world. It makes it much more useful, much more applicable to how we really do things. But it's different from traditional software in that all of that capability makes it a little bit harder to make reliable. So we do a lot of work to make it reliable. But where we can, the pipes and the kind of foundation of the software is often going to still be traditional software. So whenever you're dealing with AI, just know that behind the scenes, there's an awful lot of traditional software that's keeping it reliable, keeping it safe, and making it useful. So when we talk about a modern AI, we're almost always talking about a large language model. You may have seen LLMs. It's the most common AI that you're going to see. Actually, in production, it's neck and neck for the most common AI. There's still an awful lot of deep learning that's been embedded in your iPhone, that's been embedded in tons of different, everything from spam filters to you name it. These are massive. So they call them large language models because they're literally 2 orders of magnitude, 1,000 times bigger than the AI that they replaced, which is classic deep learning models. Been trained on most of the internet and a ton of other data. when you prompt it, and this is an important thing for those of you that are using, whether it's inside of Kahua, whether it's ChatGPT or anywhere else, the way a prompt works is it's matching what you give it against everything it knows, and what you pointed it towards, and then it synthesizes that into the most plausible answer. So when you think about a prompt, it's kind of like a search term, except instead of searching and giving you links, it's taking the pieces that it's been trained on and combining them into an answer. So basically what you want to do with a prompt, especially a good prompt, is narrow it down so that so that when it does that matching, it gives you a better answer. Once again, some of what a Kahua will do is do some of that for you by adding onto your prompt additional information that you're not seeing. It's happening behind the scenes, so that it's narrowing down that search to give you a better answer, a more accurate answer, or just a more correct answer. So all of what I've told you so far is that we've got this powerful tool that's a bucking bronco if we don't put a harness on it. And that's a lot of what takes a lot of work. So it's a real AI system, especially a mature one like Kahua is developing and is releasing. It's more than just wrapping in AI. And some of you, if you ever deal with the startup world, you may have heard the term AI wrapper. That was a bit of a derisive term a little while ago. It's a lot more than that. It comes from constraints, and those constraints, some of them we know to do immediately. Some of them come because we've tested and we say, oh, we got to make sure it doesn't do this. Some of it's limiting what the AI is looking at. Some of it's limiting what the AI, not telling it what not to do, which often is a rule we would do. And then testing it over and over and over again. Some of that testing can be automated. Some of that is keeping people up at night because they just keep trying it over and over again. What's important in all of this is the distinction between enterprise AI and consumer AI. So consumer AI isn't really built to be enterprise grade, not in the way I mean here. Yes, it'll be secure, whether it's a ChatGPT or whether it's something else, but it's meant to be open-ended. It's meant to give you interesting answers, and it's really up to you to make it reliable or get out of it what you want. What we're doing, or what Kahua is doing, is that some of that, you want to keep some of that flexibility around, but you also want to make sure that it's giving you correct answers and giving you the best possible answers. Consumer AI is not going to have the specific testing and constraints that are needed for reliable outputs. That's the job of a software team. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do this to you. I just want to remind folks on the call, can you please just use the Q&A button just on the lower side of your screen to put your question. Thank you. Sorry, once again, you.
Have we had a question, or are you just doing that to remind folks?
Yeah, we have a lot of people join us after you started, so yeah.
Got it. Great. So folks, yeah, I'm happy to answer questions along the way. We're going through a fair amount here, as opposed to waiting till later, though we will have a Q&A session later. So to recap for folks that just joined, we've talked about how AI is still just software. It's very different from traditional software in that it can handle the real world as it presents itself. And a lot of what I just talked about here is some of the work that goes into taking the power of AI and combining it in such a way with traditional software so that you have a system that does what you need it to do. There's some myths out there that I think are important to speak to. One of them is that AI doesn't automatically get better the more you use it. I hear this a lot. I even hear it in conference sessions. To be clear, AI at its core is a model, and the model gets trained in a very specific way, and then it gets published. Now, a system like a Kahua or some others can take notes along the way, and the software publisher themselves can go and say, well, we're finding that people are using it more like this. Let's add some behind the scenes prompts and other information. So yes, the system might improve, but AI itself doesn't. And that's important because they don't naturally learn outside of that training. And what sometimes happens is people will think it learns while I use it. And when a human learns, they remember most of what they learned on. Therefore, it's going to remember everything I use it for. Therefore, I have a new security risk. And if I put my information into the AI, it's going to be exposed in a way that it wouldn't be. And that whole chain of thinking, I think, has made people very nervous about using AI from a security standpoint. Now, there's 2 points here. One of them is, generally speaking, that's not true, whether it's ChatGPT or it's anything else. With Kahua specifically, it will be, and I'll let Taylor speak to this more, it will be wrapped in the security you're used to with Kahua anyway. And actually the way Kahua is using AI is really exciting, where they're either privately hosting their models or they're using their own that are hosted actually on site in some cases. And I don't want to get ahead of myself with how Kahua is building it so much as to say security has been part of the conversation from the very beginning. But anyway, this idea that it automatically gets better the more you use it, just like a human would, is a misconception that is just not true. I do see we have a question. Let me get through this slide before we answer it. As a result, they don't recall what you use them for. Again, a system may have memory. It may have it may take notes along the way, but AI itself does not remember what you've used it for. So that project information is not recallable unless the system makes it so, but the AI itself doesn't. And a final thing that's really interesting is when you're using a chatbot, especially, there's this about 45% of people think that it just looks up answers. Actually, it doesn't do that, and that's important because as you're prompting and using it, you need to know that it's actually synthesizing the answer. So again, the better you give it a prompt, the better it's going to synthesize a good answer. And Lakin, was that a question? Would you like to ask it now? I just saw something.
Yes, it's more or less a comment. They said that they add that you become better with AI the more you use it, not AI becomes better the more you use it.
I'm sorry, say that again. That we become better?
So they made a comment that AI users become better the more
Oh, well,
they
that's true.
use AI, not the other way.
Well, that's a really nice point. Is that what the value of AI tools is that they can complement you and make you better at your job, and often in ways that you might not expect. Like you can ask AI to brief you before a meeting in a way you just would never have time to do. That's one I like to use. You can have it summarize things and so on. That's a really nice point. I'm glad whoever it was brought it up. There's another thing that's really important is people are often talking about AI as if it's one thing. AI is good, AI is bad, AI can do this, AI can't do this. There are hundreds of different AI models out there right now. And where you hear about a few of them a lot, whether it's GPT-X or it's Claude 4.5 or whatever, but there are literally hundreds of them. And again, part of the work of Taylor and his team is to go and search for the right model, especially ones that are safe, that they can control and host themselves. The key thing is that it isn't just about how good or bad they are. Some of them are tuned a little differently to write better. Some are better at math. Some are better at science, so on and so forth. Just kind of like a human, even though I said they're not. But they're trained to be better at certain things than others. Some are bigger and more broadly capable. Some of them are narrow and are very focused. But the point is that there's a wide range of them, and that's just going to keep being true. So as a result, that makes that even more complicated because it's not just the model, it's what people have surrounded it with. What's it connected to? What rules and constraints have been built into it? How much has it been tested? How reliable is it, and so on? What do users and outputs are, or what inputs and outputs, are available? So try not to make broad assumptions about AI. Like maybe you use ChatGPT and it gave you an unsatisfactory answer. That doesn't mean all AI will be that way. In fact, if anything, it says, okay, a consumer chatbot isn't what I want. Let's see if there's a more mature system or a more specific system that's going to do what I need it to do. Just be careful right now. And the other point that I'd like to make is we're really early in all of this. So try to imagine, for those of you who have gray hair like I do, or those of you who are familiar with this otherwise, AI in 1999, the internet in 1999, it was exciting and obviously tons of money going into it. People use that analogy a lot when they talk about the AI bubble. By the way, yes, of course, we're in a bubble. We're always in a bubble when you have big new technology like this. It doesn't mean it's going to crash tomorrow. As 1999, it didn't crash. But the point was there wasn't even broadband yet. You couldn't use video. There was really no internet on mobile at that point. In fact, there was no internet on mobile at that point. You didn't even have automatic web page uploads, which I think most younger people don't even know what I mean when I say that. But if you did anything, it would have to re-download, which was insane. Google had, I believe, been founded at that point, but nobody had really heard of it yet. So the point is search was really bad. So the point I'm making is the internet we use now is dramatically better and just a different beast from where it was in 1999. And I think that's about where we are, 97, 99. It really is. There's no perfect analogy, but the idea helps you to think about we're early in this and some of the key innovations that we can expect to happen haven't happened yet. We don't quite know what they are, although we have some ideas. And one of them, funny enough, is that we will figure out AI that can learn while you use it. We just have not yet. AI in 2030 is going to be unrecognizable from where AI is today. I think AI in 2027 is going to be meaningfully different from where it is. In a year from now, we'll look back and you'll say, wow, that's been a pretty busy year. Partly because this is the year of implementation. This is the year where a lot of big things have already been figured out, even though, as I say, there's more to come. So now you're finding companies like Kahua that are saying it's now good enough for us to make it available for our users. So we're doing the hard work. And a lot of that started last year, but you're going to see more and more of that. But I do think there are a couple of big leaps that we'll see. And we don't, again, we can't know what they are because they haven't been invented yet, but we do have an idea about where those directions are going. Another point that is probably becoming obvious is AI is going to be everywhere. Right now, most software platforms have AI of some kind or another. Most people start with an assistant because it's kind of a natural thing to do. You've got a lot of data, a lot of information. Let's make it available to natural language, normal language queries. There's a billion people using, literally a billion people using chatbots at least once a week. Untold amounts of money being spent on infrastructure. I mean, I've used the number 3 to 4 trillion. I think it's probably more than that if you include China and the Middle East. Just in the US, we know that there's about 3 to 4 trillion that have been allocated. I'll be honest, I don't remember using the word trillion ever before about 18 months ago, and now we use it all the time. There's already glasses. Meta has some good ones. They're putting them into laptops, smartphones. It's been a little slow, but you're still going to start to see more and more. And it's there as apps, but you're going to see that AI gets embedded or get integrated into more and more things. I'm not kidding, there's actually a toothbrush that has AI in it, which I think is the peak of hype in my mind. Samsung is talking about putting it into their 500 million consumer devices. Now, Samsung has said this before, but the point is you're going to see this. Google has just really put their Gemini model into everything from Gmail to, you don't have to use it if you don't want, but it's there if you want it. So I think the idea is you're going to see it everywhere. And not surprisingly, we're seeing it in construction. Before I dive into this, Lakin, is there a question?
Yes, there is. Are there any specific AI models or softwares that can answer construction issues better than ChatGPT?
Yes. There's a few points to that. And let me get to, I'm actually going to talk about AI construction here. So why don't we do that and I'll revisit that. But I will say it's not a question of models. It's a question of systems. It's what product is it in? Most people can't really go directly deal with a model anyway. It's always got some kind of an interface in front of it. And the point is that a chatbot isn't made for that, even though they're getting smarter, but you really want the constraints I talked about before. Mm-hmm. So in construction, we're seeing it spread rapidly, just like happened with mobile 15 years ago. Let's call it 10 years ago. Yeah, 15 years ago. Users started using the ChatGPTs and Claudes on their own. And the first thing a lot of companies did was say, hang on a minute, you can't do that. And of course, they still did it anyway. So the users and consumer chatbots kind of led the way. The problem, again, is that these things lead to risks. Now, one of them is that if somebody's using their private ChatGPT, even if the AI doesn't necessarily learn, it doesn't learn from them using it, the act of uploading it means it's part of their system. So if they leave the company, they've got some version of your data with them. So that's one thing to be worried about. I mentioned before the easy button problem, and this is a genuine concern. There's actually a psychological theory called automation bias, where if it comes from a computer, we tend to trust it. And the problem there is that we're going to start seeing things that look really good, because part of what AI does is even if it's wrong, it's formatted well. So the things we're used to looking for bad information or a sloppy response aren't there. So we might wind up, well, we're already seeing people trust the AI more than it should be trusted. So I think it's a healthy skepticism to say you're not off the hook. It is automated part of what you do, but your job is still to review it and you're still responsible. Another one that I haven't seen people talking about enough, but I think is important, is AI can very often over-answer. You ask a question and you get 2 pages of an answer. One of the things we found from the internet, from the email and the web and so on, is our time has really compressed, and the difference between, as I mentioned before, your kind of private life and work almost got erased. Mobile really made that true. Well, AI is going to go in another direction in that it can answer so quickly that all of a sudden the pressure to answer back, we're going to have a sense of I better answer it quickly. Think about what's happened with instant messaging and with chat and with with other things on mobile. We have a sense, or text, we have a sense that we should answer quickly, where often in the past, because we would have gotten the information more slowly because of a phone call or someone sent you something, you'd have more time to think, but text makes you feel like you should answer quickly. I think you're going to see that more with AI, where there's a sense I need to answer before I've had time to think. And I kind of group that under output overwhelm. That, to me, those two things, the easy button problem and output overwhelm, I'm more worried about that than the things that the AI is going to do. We're going to keep making the tools better and better. The human side of the equation, I think, is what we should be focused on now, because it's not so easy to fix. People naturally are going to say, oh, it looks like it did it for me, I'm just going to do something else, as opposed to stopping and checking. And people are going to emotionally get overwhelmed and stressed because they're getting these answers so quickly and they don't have time to think about them. So those two, to me, feel like it's more of a concern than whether the AI itself is good, bad, or indifferent, because again, I think that's going to get fixed. In terms of what to use, I want to go back to that question. I think that you're going to, where possible, try not to use consumer AI, whether it's Claude or it's Gemini or ChatGPT. And I say that because it hasn't been tuned to the complexities of AI. It doesn't know, how the industry works other than what it's seen in the open internet, as opposed to using something that's in a Kahua or that's in some other software that is made for what you're using it for, where the producer of that software has spent time thinking about a good user interface. Maybe they've thought about how to avoid the output overwhelm, or they've given you the ability to look at the information it gave you next to the original document. That's a big one. Again, I mentioned that I spent some time with specifications. It's really good to see the original document when you look at the summary, just to check. Doesn't mean you have to read the whole thing, but I think that's important. So hopefully that answers the question that came through. Before I move on, I see we have one more.
Just one question. So it's basically asking, can you share a real world example of how a project team would use both, AI capabilities and these Gen AI platforms like ChatGPT on active capital programs? So
Yes,
I think
and
yeah.
that leads me to the next slide. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So, as I say, current AI is really good at text and documents. We're going to find other things later when it comes to models and so on. But for the moment, text and documents and images is what it's really good at. So think about finding information quickly. Whether it's, again, I come from the spec world. So what's the standard for this concrete slump test? Right? I want to just find it quickly. I don't want to flip through documents or scroll through Control F, which, there may be 40 different ASTM mentions. Summarizing specifications. So list all of the first 90-day deliverables from the contractor. So here again, if you're managing a capital project, 2 months ago you may have negotiated what you expect, but okay, today's the day, we're kicking it off. Tell me again everything and when it's due. Comparing versions. So of course versions change repeatedly, again, whether it's specs, whether it's drawings, because you've had changes as the project has proceeded. In the case of a contract, maybe it's, find and list all the changes in this contract. There are tools that do exactly this. You can get a first pass from a consumer chatbot, but just be careful because it probably won't be complete, especially if it's a list. So I find that, the reason I mentioned try not to use a consumer chatbot for this sort of thing is it's not built to give you everything. It's built to give you an answer, as opposed to a proper bit of software that has been trained to give you a real list and actually has checks in the background to make sure it's caught everything. So we got one more.
Just one comment. So they're saying many speakers say that AI learn or your ChatGPT learn, and you need to train your ChatGPT. And from what they understand is that isn't really the case, correct?
Correct. That is, I know that people have said that, and I'm sorry that you hear that sometimes. The way a model, the way a model is built is there's a very careful multi-month training process to create the model, and then they publish the model. That's why you see GPT 5.1 and 5.2, and they don't happen right away. What you are hearing from the ChatGPT folks is that they're putting in memory. But what they mean by memory is it summarizes what you just worked on and gives it a bullet or two. In fact, in ChatGPT, you can go access your memory. There's actually a little thing in the settings. So they're kind of making up for the fact that it can't learn by having it take notes. I kind of hinted at that earlier. That isn't learning the way we think of learning, where you really understand what the context was and you've taken deep lessons. It's just going to remember some things about you as opposed to genuinely learning how to do something new or some of the more nuanced parts of learning. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, just one last question, you, before we turn it over to Taylor. What is an AI assistant? That's the question that we got from
It's a great
Dan.
question. Yeah,
Yep.
great question. So when we say assistant, we generally mean a chatbot that has been connected to a system. So in the case of a Kahua, for example, they will have connected it to some or all of the data and information that you have as a user. Now, it won't be able to see other people's projects. It won't be able to see anything it doesn't have permission to see. But at the point of an assistant is to help you to navigate the system itself or the information in there or a subset of that. And it can often do things for you. So maybe it can automate a piece, or maybe it can summarize something, maybe it can write something for you. I mean, these are it's a general category, so I don't want to speak too much, and Taylor will speak a little more about what Kahua specifically does. But when you hear the term AI assistant, and again, it gets used a lot of different ways, but the way I see it used most often is, and the point of it is, how is it going to stand between you and the software to help you get done what you want to get done? As I say, by accessing information, by pulling up lists, by generating documents, so on and so forth. So hopefully that helps. And it really is an assistant in what we mean by that term is how to think of it. It's there to help you to get your work done. And often the final point there is, it's kind of a sliding scale what it does, in that the creator of the software, the Kahua, can choose what it's ready for, what it should be able to access and not. In the case of Kahua, it's such a well permissioned, and the permissions are so fine grained and controlled that it may not give you access to things you want because for whatever reason it's been turned on and turned off. So it's there to get your work done, but done in a way that the software publisher has decided is in the best interests of the user.
Yeah, thank you so much, you. And before Taylor starts, I just want to preface by saying that, as a construction management platform, can we already solve real complex programs for owners, right? And we're helping construction organizations, deliver their projects on time and on budget, building smart and faster. So layering, artificial intelligence on top of that, Taylor is going to be speaking on, some of the ways that we're helping the industry innovate and evolve with artificial intelligence. So Taylor, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Lakin. And thanks, Hugh. I just want to, before I even get going, say, Hugh, that was a great introduction. As someone that works with us all the time, some of it is not necessarily too easy to articulate, and Hugh does a very good job of that. So everything he just said is very factual and correct. You can
Yes, I
use
couldn't agree
ChatGPT
more.
to look it up. But all right, with that, let's get going. So before jumping into what exactly we're building with I want to talk about how we think about it, and then kind of the pillars or principles on how we build every single feature. So I'll start with these middle two, which are security and privately hosted. When I say security, I mean you can be ensured that if you're interacting with AI within Kahua, that everything adheres to role-based access control as well as project-based access control. And this seems like kind of a given, right? Like I shouldn't have access to information that I don't have access to. However, this is something that is often missed because several rush into these AI features and don't necessarily focus on things that are greatly important, like security. Privately hosted, what this means is that all of your data remains within Kahua and is never shipped out or sent to any third-party provider. So this is essentially, if you're interacting with any AI feature in Kahua, you know that your data will stay within our network on our servers. You can be ensured that there's not going to be any data that's leaked, and you'll see some demos here in a second. But there is real value to interacting with data in an enterprise system like Kahua because you're ensured that, again, that data is secure. And then I'm going to move to trust. This is often misunderstood and it's often grouped along with security. Uh, Trust, in my mind, is a few different things. So, first, that's listed here is that if you're interacting with AI within Kahua, you have a proven partner with deep construction and capital program expertise. The next is that features that come out, you have to kind of understand how good they are or how bad they are at certain tasks. And this goes back to Hugh's original slide of what is it and what is it not, which is our job to communicate to users to make sure that you guys understand what it's good at and what it's bad at. And how do we actually determine what it's good at and what it's bad at is something that's called benchmarking, which is our way of evaluating model performance on specific tasks. So this kind of goes back to a question that we had earlier in Q&A, which is is the AI that's in a construction platform, is that going to be better than ChatGPT? And is it better is actually a very tough question because it's so broad. There are certain tasks like data extraction tasks where you're actually pulling out data that's somewhat black and white to say, yes, it's good at this or no, it's not good at this. But then there are often tasks that are subjective, such as let's say that you're pulling out submittal items from a specification document. That's a very subjective process. And what's better to one person might be not as good to another person. And so the more that we can make that transparent, the more trust that there is with the system that you're using. And then finally, enterprise grade. So I think you did, again, a really good job of differentiating between consumer grade and enterprise grade. With consumer grade, you get kind of this open-ended general chatbot that's built to answer kind of everyday questions that you have. Whereas with enterprise grade AI solutions, you have a product that is conforming to your business process and actually helps you with workflows that you need to get done. Also, it has access to data that it needs to have access to in order to give you the answer that you're looking for. So with that, I'll move on to the next slide.
Taylor, there's one question that is really topical, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
So does Kahua have any documentation for privacy with respect to AI that you're not going to share it here, but that they can go find?
Yes, yeah, there's actually a QR code that'll be at the very end of this that has all of our documentation on anything AI that we put out. Thanks, you.
Oh,
Sorry. Okay, again, before we move on to what exactly we're building, I just want to quickly share what makes our AI unique. So the first is that it's built for construction and capital programs. And what do I mean by this? This is such a broad statement. It means that when we're thinking about AI features, we're not a hammer looking for a nail, right? We're actually going to these real project workflows where we believe that there's actual friction, working back from there and seeing where we can and maybe aren't going to inject AI. And again, the benefit of this is that it's immediately useful for your daily out of the box work. The second, secure and private by design. I hit on this a little bit on the last slide, but this just means that all of your data stays within your Kahua environment and there's no public leakage potential or any public exposure to these third-party models like OpenAI, Anthropic, you name it. The third, which I'm personally most excited about, is the ability to build anything inside of Kahua. And I've got a demo for this in a couple of slides. But what I mean by this is right now, if you want to set up a custom app in Kahua, what you would do is you would use our low-code builder called KBuilder. However, with some of these AI capabilities that we're introducing, you'll have the ability to just pretty much talk to this, I guess, AI assistant. I'll use that term because it was referenced previously. You'll have the ability to talk to this AI assistant, which actually knows how to create apps in Kahua based on the process that you lay out. So you can specify your schema, workflows, whatever it might be. And the idea for this is much quicker software that conforms to your business process. And finally, flexible AI deployment. So the ability to control where AI is enabled at every level in your organization. So making sure that the wrong person doesn't have access to AI features that you don't want them to have access to. And then also scaling capability based on your business needs. Next slide. Okay, so what we're actually building, we like to group all of the features that we build into two different buckets. The first bucket is assist, and you can think of these features as any feature that helps you get data into Kahua or helps you get answers out of Kahua. So the data that you're getting into Kahua, you can think of these usually as repetitive, time-consuming tasks, where you could, I guess you would really want to upload that and have some sort of AI or I guess virtual worker take out all of the information out there in that document and then key that into Kahua. That's a good way to think of a lot of the assist functionality that we're introducing. So you'll see in a second asset nameplate scanning, which plays directly into our asset-centric project management offering. What this is you're able to go around, and if you're doing some sort of FCA, then you can go and actually scan an asset nameplate that doesn't even have a template associated with it and pull out fields that are predefined in Kahua with the AI actually going through and looking for it, which again, you'll see in a second. The next is content enhancement, which will take content in Kahua and help you rewrite that information, again, keeping it behind our privacy boundaries so that no information is being leaked. The next is Kahua Assistant, which is coming soon. This you can view as a way to, I guess, chat with your data, right? So if you have a question like how many outstanding RFIs do I have, or I need this information in the specification document, whatever it might be, this will help you find information significantly easier. The next one is title block extraction. If you upload a drawing set, we will pull out all of the metadata to make it easier to search and find information in drawings. That's just the first of many features that we will be introducing for drawings. And finally, RFP summarization and comparison, which is relatively straightforward. The whole goal or objective of Assist is to save hours, reduce errors, and keep projects on track. And then moving over to Create, which is the other bucket that we place AI features in. You can think of this primarily as the ability to create apps in minutes with KBuilder Canvas, which I just spoke about, and you'll see in a second. But this is not just limited to that. You can also adapt workflows instantly to project changes and replace spreadsheets and point solutions. So the ability to create an app and do pretty much anything that you want with that app is an extremely powerful concept because you can do business exactly kind of how you want to. The software conforms to you. Not only that, if you have some sort of workflow that is somewhat repetitive or time consuming, you can set up that we're going to be calling them skills in this create functionality that allows you to automate what you want and augment what you want. So overall, we're looking to augment work, not automate. I think if you automate too much of your work, you kind of fall into some of those pitfalls that Hugh mentioned previously. The one that I liked the most is the automation bias, is what he said. So again, we're looking to augment, not automate. So you're still reviewing all of the content that is generated by the AI and then put into Kahua. And with that, we'll move on to some product demos. So first is going to be our assist functionality. We'll show you content enhancement and asset nameplate, but starting with asset nameplate scanning. So within Kahua, I've got the assets app, and I will create a industrial duty fractional motor. Previously, I'd have to key in this information manually, but now I'll have the ability to just select an image, which is a nameplate, and it pulls out all of these fields or attributes that I want to track in Kahua. And it does this in a matter of seconds, as opposed to maybe spending 2 minutes actually keying this information in. The next is what we call content enhancement. So taking this information, like let's say a daily report or issues, whatever you might have in an unlimited text field, and doing some sort of action to it. So here I'm making this information more concise while still retaining all of the important information. And it, again, condenses that information to a much more concise version, and you can save it and send this out to any sort of stakeholder on your project. Again, the value of doing these features in Kahua is that you have all of that data that is in a secure environment that inherits all of the same controls that you do if you're using Kahua in general. And with that, we'll move on to the next demo. I think this might be the same one, Hugh. Okay, so next is our create functionality, specifically building apps with KBuilder Canvas. So here you have this guy, Ted Garrett, who is a cave builder expert. Um, he gets sent this email on an app that they need built, which is a lessons learned app that have all these fields, this workflow idea. Um, Pretty simple app, but you'll get the main idea. So you can come in to Cave Builder Canvas and describe this idea. He's just going to paste this in, and as you can see, Kahua Builder Canvas will actually generate the app based on the specifications, let you know exactly what it generated, the schema on the left, the workflow that it generated, and a fully functioning app works in seconds. So let's say that you need to change a field or add a field. Here you're adding an importance field that's actually a lookup list with low, medium, and high. You can see actually misspelled importance, and it corrects the spelling. And that adds that field. It seems like it's magic. It kind of works like magic. It's pretty wild. But as you can see, that field is directly put in there. And not only will you have the ability to change fields, but you'll also have the ability to add workflow steps or do anything to this workflow that you might need to do. So here you can see adding a workflow step that gets added, and you have the ability to drag and drop different steps for record management. And as you can see, it's not just going to work on that, I guess, where you created it on your laptop. It's also going to work cross-platform on mobile, as well as any other native app that you have. And here you can see the app working and functioning just as a normal Kahua app would. And we can move to the next slide here. So with that, I just want to leave on this note before we get to Q&A. But this is kind of our vision and objective is we want to empower you guys to make quality decisions and not be doing mindless data entry and analysis by just giving you information like these tools that'll help you do your work. I guess data entry gets easier and analysis gets much quicker because you're getting the answers to questions immediately. And finally, I mean, I just think that we're just getting going with some of these features. It's built for construction and capital programs, built for you and the way that you want to work. And with that, I'll open it up for Q&A. And Hugh, I don't know if you want to chime in.
The only point I'll make is I mentioned in my portion that it's early, and the underlying technology of AI itself is still getting better and growing and so on. I mentioned we're mostly doing text and some images right now, but things like video, things like geometry, i.e. models and so on. We know people are working on that. So the cool thing here is Kahua has put together a team that now has some pretty deep experience with making things that actually work. So this is one of those, check it out now, but also watch this space.
All right. Do we have any more questions from the audience? Okay. Once again, I just want to say a big thank you to you sitting and Taylor Last for joining us on this session. I think everyone is going to agree with me. That was pretty packed and that was very, very insightful. You touched a lot on a bunch of things around AI myths. What are some of the risks regarding AI, data privacy, and Taylor talked about some of the initiatives and guiding principles for Kahua around AI. And if you have more questions, you want to learn more about Kahua as a construction management platform, and you want to learn more about some of the capabilities that we're going to be releasing as we progress in the year, please use the QR code on this next slide. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so we're just going to leave this on for a couple more seconds. It's going to take you to a landing page. Just put in your information, and we're going to have some of our experts in-house reach out to you and provide more information. And we hope you're able to learn more about Kahua. And again, we are solving complex capital programs, and we're leveraging AI to solve real use cases in the industry, to help you work easier, to help you build faster. So once again, thank you everyone for joining. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Lakin, do you want to quickly talk about that one question that you answered in chat? I believe it was kind of a good one about I think data retention.
Oh, okay. So I think Taylor touched on that. So Taylor, we're asking about how we ensure data privacy and how we store our data. Do you want to speak briefly on that?
Yeah, sure. I don't see the question exactly, but I can answer it in a general
Just
sense.
how do we store data? How do we ensure data security?
Yeah, so we are what's called FedRAMP authorized, which is pretty hard to achieve. It is a different standard. It's a standard that you have to meet in order, or you have like all of these encryption controls that you have to meet and different audits that you have to pass. And in order to do that, we have controls and guardrails in place to make sure that data is completely secure and encrypted at rest as well as in transit. Yeah, I mean, everything is hosted on our servers and nothing ever leaves our network.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, just an addition to that, it is also important to know that Kahua was the first project management information systems for construction that was FedRAMP authorized. And security is part of our foundation in Kahua. A lot of our, clients are in the federal and defense contractors. You understand how much they value security. So, and that just speaks to how we're taking Kahua AI, right? Knowing that a lot of models out there, there are third party access to that. With Kahua, we have very restricted access control. Your data only works for you, right? And it is privately hosted. So again, just use the QR code, and we're gonna have some of our experts within the internally reach out to you and then answer some of your other questions. Do you have any last
Nope,
comments?
that's great. Thank you so much. It's been an honor as always.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Yep,
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone. Yeah, bye.